Good day, gentlemen. Dirk here with a little update for you. A few weeks ago, I posted the old white guy video, that little song I wrote. I was sharing that, and I decided to go ahead and put it on my MGTOW channel, even though I hadn't worked on that channel for a while. And I partly just wanted to see if anyone was still there, and it turns out that, yeah, that channel actually grew a bit. So thank you to the guys that shared that message with other people, because like I said, I haven't posted anything for about 5 years. Why am I doing it now? Well, for one, the road trip's kind of over given current events. But let me back up to where I signed off because I've been living off of the grid for several years as a van lifer, going to places like this. I'm recording this as a voiceover, so I'm watching this imagery as we speak. These pronghorns right here, for example, are in Oregon. And I spent a lot of time in Oregon. Basically, what I did is I quit my job, bought a van, and hit the road. Being retired military, that's really the only way I could get by on my income. And I decided to do that. So I basically traded my career for freedom, and I spent about 4 years out here in places like you're looking at here, and it was fucking great. Honestly, I when I started, I thought, well, let me take a little sabbatical and travel around for the summer and see how it goes, and then maybe I'll regroup and get a career going somewhere else again. But turns out I really like not going to work every day. And I went mostly, I was staying Pacific Northwest in the summer and Arizona in the winter. That's me in front of a giant sequoia in Northern California. And this, of course, is Wizard Island at Crater Lake. So I'll kind of give you some commentary on this video as we go along. And I'll talk about some of the current event stuff that I think needs to be talked about. But I hit the road, and the van life thing, it's gotten popular in certain circles, and there's a lot of people doing it. I met some really good people. I met some complete assholes and everything in between. But for me, one of the primary reasons why I stopped producing content for the MGTOW solution was because I'm off the grid, or I was off the grid in most of these places. And so it's not conducive to be uploading content when you're parked out in the middle of nowhere with no cell phone or any of that. So I just put it on hold. And that whole project was, of course, initially the MGTOW solution was a book. I put that online on YouTube and then kept going for a little bit, but I didn't work on that channel for more than about 6 months or so, and it seemed like it resonated with some guys, and that was great. My whole goal with that project was just to get the word out, and maybe I did. I made my own small contribution to that effort, and that's okay. And so, of course, the question is, well, what am I going to do now? Why am I sticking my head up on YouTube? And here's the thing. By the way, that's Mount Hood. That was a really great lake to paddle and swim at. YouTube right now has really gone off the rails as far as men's content and all that. I mean, I know there's like a thriving bunch of channels over there now. But what really perturbs me about YouTube right now, aside from the fact that everybody has to speak in code because of the censorship, the other thing that really rubs me the wrong way about that is they're going after Russell Brand, for example, based on sexual harassment charges or rape or whatever he's being charged with. And I know that I just said a keyword that might get this video canceled, but I think I'll let it slide and just hope for the best. So basically, we've had the British government going after Russell Brand and trying to get him shut down. YouTube went along with it. They've demonetized his content, but they're still showing commercials on his content. So YouTube is profiting from Russell Brand's effort as a content creator, but he's not making a dime off of YouTube right now. Now, they also went to other platforms, and I believe Facebook's in on it too, but Rumble said no. Rumble said no. We're not going to demonetize him. We're not going to throw him under the bus. We're not going to cancel him. Pack sand. We're not doing it. And so kudos to Rumble for that. I believe X, formerly Twitter, did the same thing. And so I would have thought that at this point in time, everybody would have been on Rumble, because as far as talking about controversial topics, because talking about men's rights is a controversial topic, and you can't even say the F word, I don't think. I think we're going to call it Barbieism from now on, at least I am. But I don't like having to tiptoe around all this, so I think people need to get over there. The thing is, like, I looked at Joker from Better Bachelor. I really like his content a lot. He's on both YouTube and Rumble, and I've looked at a few other channels, and it seems to be running about 10% as far as the number of subscribers over on that platform. The thing about Rumble is you can say whatever you want, and they won't shut you down or cancel you or any of that. So I may do something further along the lines of this red pill stuff, but the thing is now we've got this whole other problem with this leftist power grab that happened, with COVID. By the way, these photos you're looking at here, that bald eagle, that was at a lake in Yellowstone. So I got to go to Yellowstone, and I really ticked off a lot of bucket list items while I was out on this trip. Yeah, and I got him taken off there. So a lot of good moments out there, and it was great for about 4 years. But with the lockdowns, that all changed. And the other thing that changed was Brandon took office, and things have gone downhill since then. And so now I find myself hunkered down on private property with friends that I know, rather than traveling around out west, because I was going to be in Oregon, but I was in Oregon during the lockdowns, and they were pretty severe. Their governor really, really clamped down on people for that, and I don't want to be there anymore. So I'm actually in the free state of Florida, which I think is the best place to be, although I will say it's way too fucking hot here in the summer. So it's been rough. But back on the screen here, this is the Tetons. I went there. I windsurfed at the Gorge. I went to a bunch of national parks in Utah and the West. Did a lot of really cool things. And it's great that we're able to do this because, we're a free country, and we've got national forest land and BLM land where you can camp for free for 2 weeks, and then you're supposed to move to a new location. And that's what I did for like 4 years. I camped out and moved around, and the van life thing, it's kind of extreme if you're used to a comfortable life. I didn't have a hard time with it because, I did a very basic build and got a really comfortable bed, and I can cook and do all the things I need to be able to do. And you've got mobility. So you sacrifice comfort, but you get a lot of freedom. And it was really good to be able to do this. And I'm no stranger to living in arduous conditions. As long as I got a nice warm bed to sleep in, I'm good to go. And so it was great. But with the lockdown, everything kind of changed. Even in the nomad community, where we were outside, people were freaking out, wearing masks in camp and avoiding each other. And there was a lot of the same kind of fear and uncertainty that everybody was going through. And it turned out that whole thing was part of a larger effort that I'm actually getting into on a channel that I did put up on Rumble. I I wanted to do something a little different, not strictly focused on men's issues, but focus on the bigger issue, which is leftism, because it's no longer just Barbieism that's the problem. It's leftism, and we see it everywhere. This is where all the wokeness came from. This is where Clown World came from, and so on that channel over there is called Speaking Freely. If you want to check it out, and it's not men's content per se, though. I've got one episode over there that's about crazy Barbie type behavior. Most of it is about the leftist power grab that started a long time ago, but really picked up steam during the lockdowns. And of course, now that that's maybe over, at least temporarily over, we're now in the full-on climate catastrophe narrative. And I've been doing a lot of research on these topics, and the disturbing part of that is it goes up to the highest levels, and the UN, the WEF, and yes, Klaus Schwab, the whole Davos crowd, those people are driving this insanity. And so the way I see it, Barbies are on the left. And if you look at the numbers, there's no question. So we've got this whole leftist push where you've got the trans people and the gay people and the environmental people and all these other people, and the thing is they're focused on things that the average American isn't that concerned about. Most people don't care if other people are gay or whatever. I don't. It's like, I don't care. Live your life, leave everyone alone, and don't go after children. The problem is they are. And we see this every day. And now, of course, we've got a wide open border with millions of people pouring into not just this country, but European countries. And we're all feeling the pinch, and everybody's kind of trying to figure out what's happening. How did this happen? And, you know, why do we have politicians in the United States that are basically wiping their ass with the Constitution? And they are. So these people, you just got to categorize them all as leftists. That they might be Marxists, communists, socialists, feminists, Barbies, oops, but whatever you want to call them. But they are deliberately destroying this country. It's not incompetence. It's a deliberate attempt to centralize control and keep people under control. So now we've got this out of control inflation thing, and of course they blame the virus for all of it. But the way I see it, the cure was worse than the disease. It was the lockdowns that screwed up society and cost people their jobs and their careers and their lives in some cases. I got to be careful what I say, I guess. Oh, look. This is the bighorn sheep. This was a highlight. This is in Anza Borrego Desert in Southern California. This was my first year out there, so like 2018, I think. I won't go back to California, but at that time it was still kind of okay. And we went on this hike and ran into this incredible herd of bighorn sheep, Borregos. And we just went in real quiet, took a bunch of pictures, and they weren't that sketchy about us because they've been kind of normalized to people. And so for me, this is kind of the cool part of life. This is the important thing, and this ties in with the whole Mike Golf Tango Oscar Whiskey thing that you're not allowed to say anymore. You're not even allowed to talk about it because it's hate speech. We've been called a hate group for actually talking about men's issues. It's absolutely absurd. But yeah, we were like 10 feet from these bighorn sheep, so that was amazing. Anyway, getting back to more current events, the country's in trouble, and it's pretty obvious. I mean, anybody can see it, and we're being gaslit at every turn and just straight up lies. We got Karine Jean, diversity hire, telling us the border's actually open, or the border's actually closed, rather. Freudian slip there. And there's no end to the narratives, and those that step out of line, like Russell Brand, get slammed. Look at what they did with Elon Musk. Elon Musk was a darling of the left for years because he's all in on the global warming narrative, and he came up with the fucking Tesla, for Christ's sake. So he was part of the solution, but it took him about 30 seconds to throw him under the bus the minute he suggested that he was going to restore free speech on Twitter. And that's a problem with the left. And that's why they can't be trusted. And that's why people need to start standing up to these people. They've been bullying Americans through COVID and climate policies, and just basically going after straight white men more than everybody, because now everybody's an oppressed group except straight white men, and we have nothing but privilege. That's the narrative, and they're sticking to it, apparently. So the thing about the men's community, per se, online, that's going to evolve, and it's going to continue to evolve. And I would like to see more of it happen on free speech platforms like Rumble and Locals and some of these others that actually don't want to censor your speech. A little bit of music just kicked in there. I think I'll let it play and then fade it out. Then again, maybe I won't. So anyway, while I was out here doing this travel around thing that I was doing, it gives you a lot of time to clear your head and kind of figure out what's important and what you want to do. And, you know, I would have liked to have just continued nomad life, but it's not as viable as it used to be, for one, because of inflation. But for another, most of the states I want to go to, they have Democrat governors, and I don't want to be subjected to their kind of authoritarian overreach next time somebody gets a cold, if you know what I mean. They're really all about grabbing as much power as possible. We just had the governor of New Mexico going after the Second Amendment. You know, of course, everybody on the left is going after the First Amendment. They're trying to shut down anything that they deem disinformation, misinformation, or malinformation, including everything that I'm talking about. So, oh, by the way, these flowers you're looking at here, this is also in Anza Borrego. We had a, what they call a super bloom that happens whenever there's a very wet winter, a lot of rain, then you get this super bloom happening out in the desert, and it was freaking amazing. It just so happened to work out that this happened for the first time in like 18 years when I was there. And it was truly amazing. So, I mean, if you look at this ecosystem, it's obviously doing fine. So, leaving the desert and going up to the mountains for the summer, that was always great. I mean, there's pros and cons to living like this. You do get cold, you do get hot. If you don't get the timing right on when you move, you can end up in some uncomfortable situations. But, you know, about 4 years on the road, I didn't have any major catastrophes except one. I think there's some video coming up. I was caught in a fire, a wildfire in Oregon. And I honestly barely got out. I'll tell you about that when the video comes up. But the whole thing with the men's community, as it evolves, you know, I kind of looked now and then over the years at what was going on, but not all that much, because I've always viewed it like the whole Mike Golf Tango Oscar Whiskey thing was more about just solve the problem and get on with your life, right? And so that's kind of what I did. The thing is, there's a lot of people out there that don't know what's going on because they're fed propaganda their entire lives through the education system, through the media. I mean, if you look at our colleges, everything's woke, everything's hard left. There's no place for traditional patriotic Americans anymore. In fact, They're the left is labeling the term patriot as kind of a racist term, like patriotism is racism. Here it is. This is Whispering Falls Campground in Oregon. So, as an aside, I'll just tell you what happened here because this was kind of sketchy. It was Labor Day, and it was a couple years ago. Labor Day, I was a camp host here. I actually signed up to be a camp host, and it was pretty cool. I stayed here, and it was nice. It's on the Santiam River, really beautiful campground before this fire came through. So it was when we had the huge wildfires with the windstorms and the power lines, and we were watching like 4 or 5 different wildfires in the area. The wind was blowing about 50 knots, and that was the last day of the season, so the campground closed. So I shut it down, and I closed the gate, and I heaved a sigh of relief because now I don't need to deal with people anymore, and I was just going to stay the night, and then the next morning head down to another campground where I was going to maybe do a little maintenance work to shut things down for the season. But about 0400, I woke up to the sound of crackling flames, and they were across the river, so I wasn't in direct fucking danger from that. But I knew I had to get out of there. So basically, there were a couple of trees blocking the road. I had to move those and get out. I drove west. I went down the highway. Turns out the whole town of Detroit, Oregon had been evacuated. I went about 10 miles down towards Salem and had to turn around because there were burning trees in the road and boulders. And so I turned around and ended up, they staged us. There were a bunch of people already down at this boat ramp. And we were all prepared to either jump in the lake or maybe they were talking about doing an evac with Blackhawks, and there were 2 Blackhawks overhead when I got there, and they couldn't do an evac because the smoke was so thick. I mean, it was like night. Even when the sun came up, it stayed dark. It was pretty gnarly. So anyway, what they ended up doing is they ran some snow plows down one of the highways to clear the debris so that we could get out, and I ended up caravanning out with about 30 other vehicles with, fire service guys on either end. And we got out okay, but it was pretty sketchy and kind of weird. Not a great way to to end the camping season. But the good news is almost nobody got hurt, and nobody in my campground because they were gone. There were, I think, 2 people that were killed in this fire, which, of course, that's tragic. But given how bad the fire was, I mean, that town was destroyed. So anyway, that was the only big epic thing that I had. As far as other negative experiences, those mostly just involve dealing with assholes now and then. But you can easily avoid that just by choosing where you camp. So anyway, I was talking more about the men's community and where that might go. And I haven't really been involved, so I don't know that I'm even really qualified to weigh in on it. All I ever did was kind of share my experience and my perspective, and that seemed to resonate with some people, so that's good. And then I look for those people that resonate with me, and I'll follow their content. Like Joker, I like Joker's channel a lot. There's a couple other. I was watching Terrence Pop for a while, and I see that there's this Pearl woman is like huge. She's got like 1.8 million people, and I'd be, well, it's a woman, so that's going to be controversial, and I'm sure people have opinions on that. I'm like, well, I'm not even going to weigh in on that because I don't know anything about her. But it's ironic that one of the biggest red pill channels out there is a woman. It's like, okay, well, fine, I suppose. Meanwhile, we've got this whole like dating crisis everybody's talking about, and the birth crisis and the marriage crisis and all that. And speaking of Joker, he just did a really good episode about how conservative men are encouraging men to step up and get married and do their part and, be a man and be the protector and provider because that's what you're supposed to do. And of course, that's all bullshit. Marriage is a sham. Everybody knows it at this point, and it's not going to change until the laws change, and that's not going to happen. anytime soon. So I stick with my initial advice that I gave to people a long time ago, which is if you're a man, don't get married, cohabitate, or get a woman pregnant. You gotta be careful because it's freaking dangerous out there. And now we got women coming out of the woodwork, making charges for things that happened many, many, many years ago. But of course, it's a double standard. Remember Tara Reid? She accused Brandon of sexual harassment, but that was kind of the point where the whole Me Too thing kind of went away. Uh-oh, did I just say a keyword? I probably did. This video is going to get flagged. Okay. So, and now they're looking at men to fix it. It's like, okay, men need to step up. No, men don't need to step up. What men need to do is the same thing that women do, which is take care of themselves. And as far as it being your destiny to get married and have kids, that's no longer a valid argument, given that none of these issues that I was talking about 5 years ago on my channel about divorce court and women still don't register for the draft, all these other double standards, they're still in place. Nobody is fixing any of this stuff. So your best bet is go your own way. Do your own thing. Take care of your own life. Find people that you can have in your life that will actually make your life better, because you don't have to go down that traditional path. And of course I'm going to speak out against it because I've been divorce raped twice. So I know of what I speak. You see them cows there. I saw a lot of great waterfalls and all kinds of cool things out here tramping around the American western states. I don't recommend everybody take van life up because it is kind of a rough life and it ain't for everybody. And some people do have YouTube channels on van life. There's lots of them actually. The biggest ones, of course, are pretty women that for some reason they're always going swimming in a bikini or doing something in yoga pants, and they're in their van and they're doing this fun stuff, and they're very attractive and scantily clad, and they have very successful so-called van life channels. Meanwhile, I've got male friends that have been putting out content for like 9 years, and they're not doing nearly as well as these hot chicks. Hot chicks on YouTube, I mean, you can make a fucking channel about anything and it'll sell. Anyway, so, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I love YouTube because, while I was out here, one of the things I learned archery from YouTube while I was out here on the road, and now I'm a pretty decent archer. The other thing I did is I spent a lot of time on music because I'm a musician and I like to write music and play music and do all that. So I had time. I had time to study music theory and practice and do all those things that you want to do. And that's the thing. Like, if you get married, you won't have time to do any of those things. And you're also setting yourself up to, have the rug pulled out from under you if she decides she's not happy or she's going to upgrade. Do a little monkey branch in action. That's very common. So, my advice stands. Marriage is a scam, and until they fix it, don't get married. As far as the religious argument, here's a thought. A lot of guys, if you're a Christian, you're supposed to get married, right? And all that. So why don't we get some male Christian leaders of some kind to perform marriage ceremonies that aren't recognized by the state? Maybe you could get married in the eyes of God without having to sign a legal contract that can ruin you. How's that for an idea? I kind of don't think it'll fly. But, I tend to be solutions oriented. And if you're in that boat, if you're devout and you want to get married for that reason, and I'm like, well, why can't you do that? But even there, because right now the laws are set up so that there is no reason for men to get married. There is no benefit for men, and there is nothing but benefits for women. It's very advantageous for them. And so it's ironic, and we have this this other crisis where you've got this hilarious trend of women having meltdowns on social media, mostly TikTok and YouTube, but probably all of them, where they're lamenting the lack of good men. And there's the other thing, because now the definition of a good man is you've got to make like 200 grand a year, you got to have all the sixes and all those things. It's like you've got women out there that are they're thinking, there's women out there that believe the average American male makes $200,000 a year. They're completely out of touch, completely entitled, and completely overvaluing themselves. We've got obese women that think they deserve, the tens, and the whole thing where you've got 90% of women going after the top 10%. It's working out great for the top 10%, but meanwhile, the young guys, they can't even get dates. And it's really bad. It's a sad state of affairs, and it's not sustainable, but it's not up to us to fix it. I think men really what they need to do is just deal with the reality that we find ourselves in and take whatever actions you can take to get through this woke nightmare that's probably going to get worse. And I don't mean to be all doom and gloom about it, but with the Democrats in charge, this country's a fucking dumpster fire. And everybody knows it, everybody sees it, but the left denies it. And I think this is part of a bigger objective, a bigger plan, a global plan that involves the WEF and Klaus Schwab and the United Nations and global leaders. Look back to how people treated their citizens in Western civilization during that little outbreak a few years ago. We had all kinds of draconian actions taken and all kinds of propaganda. I mean, and it's done so much damage to so many lives and economies and countries, and it's really been a huge loss. And of course, they blame it on the virus, but it wasn't the virus that did all this damage. It was the response to the virus. The cure was worse than the disease for most people. Now, that isn't to say that people didn't tragically die, because they did. And of course, that's a tragedy. But there were a lot of other things that didn't need to happen that also went along with that. And they really overreached. And it seems like they just tried it again recently. And it sort of sounds like the American people aren't going along with it. And another good development that I'm seeing is some of the so-called silent majority are starting to fight back. And it's against wokeness and leftism and communism and all of those things. But you got to remember that Barbieism is in there too. They're on the left, and they're all under this huge banner, and they've got a lot of power right now, and they're running with it. We've got all kinds of things going on that we probably don't even know about. The border is completely out of control, and the only reason we're hearing about it now is because it's starting to affect Democrats. New York City, these sanctuary cities that have justifiably received thousands and thousands of illegal aliens, they're getting what they asked for. They said they're sanctuary cities. They're the ones that open the border. So what, you want to just leave them all in Texas? No, that's not fair to the people of Texas. If Democrats want to let immigrants in, Democrats should be taking care of them. But they don't. We saw what happened at Martha's Vineyard. They let off a busload, and they're like, oh, hi. Here, have some cookies. It's great. We really support you. Now get the fuck out of our neighborhood. These people have no shame, they have no honor, and they have no integrity. They will lie to your face, piss on your back, tell you it's raining, and claim that because you're a white male, you are no longer relevant. In fact, you're the problem. But it's not just white males, it's all males. I mean, basically, like, if you're a straight white male, that's 3 strikes against you. If you're gay, you can get away with being a white male, apparently. Or if you're a white male that identifies as a female, you can do that. And I've got another idea. Let's try this one out. How about, like, we know the military is a clusterfuck right now, right? Nobody wants to join the military except maybe men that want to have gender reassignment surgery. Where, if you don't know, if you go into the military and you get gender reassignment surgery, the government will pay for it, and then you'll also be exempt from physical training and deployment. So, of course, people are going to attempt to take advantage of that. Meanwhile, China's military is getting built up pretty dramatically, and they're not sitting through lectures about how to integrate with, how do I put this? They're not focused on the woke agenda, let's just put it that way. So if we get into it with them, or Russia, or anyone else, there's a good chance we might need a draft, and guess what? Women are exempt, and they've tried to change that a couple of times. Even some Democrats have tried to change that, but it never goes through. So here's my proposal. If there is a draft, and I know you guys, you 18 to 24-year-old men, you're the only ones in the country that have to register for the draft. Women don't, and that's wrong. So if there's a draft and men get called up, what I would recommend is just tell them you identify as female. You don't have to do anything. You can still keep your beard and all that. Just tell them you identify as female, and that should do it, right? Because it worked for Leah Thomas. It's working for guys in prison. They're like, no, I'm a girl. Send me to the women's prison. You know, they're getting away with this in schools and gyms and everything else. If you were watching, you just caught my little tribute to Neil Peart. But anyway, that might work, but it probably wouldn't. They would call bullshit and say, no, you have a penis, you're a man, so you're going. And you could argue with their own logic, and you would most likely lose. So the birth crisis, the marriage crisis, the dating crisis, all these things are like going to be the end of civilization and all that. But until people get to the root causes, I'm going to continue to encourage men to do their own thing, because you can still have an amazing life without a woman. Imagine that. Some of the most lonely people on the planet are married men in loveless marriages. Probably women too, in all fairness. I mean, if you've got a shitty marriage and you're stuck, that's a pretty bad place to be. So why put yourself in that situation? This was somewhere in Arizona. This shot, I went to take the shot of this plant, and that little hummingbird just kind of popped in there, and all these other flowers are pretty nice. So anyway, getting back to what we're talking about and what I might do, my Speaking Freely channel over on Rumble did not pick up very much traction, and I'm not sure why. I think the content's good, the production's good and all that. I think the messaging's good, but I don't know how they promote those videos and do all those things. But I will say that if I do continue to create content, it's not going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on Rumble, and it'll probably be on that Speaking Freely channel, or I might do something else. I just don't know yet, and I'd kind of like to get your guys' input on that whole situation, because I'll bet most of you are more in touch with what's going on in the so-called manosphere, or whatever you want to call it, than me, because I've been kind of out of the loop for a little while. Do you think guys will go over to Rumble? Is it going to happen at some point, or is it just because it's a new platform, it hasn't really taken off yet? I mean, there's a few people over there doing really well, and then there's the locals community. Like some of the guys are over there. I know that Sandman's over on Rumble. I'm not sure if he's on locals or not. I know Joker's got a locals account, and there's probably many others, but there's just not as much content over on Rumble. I could not have learned archery or music theory on Rumble. There's just more more opportunities. There's more content on YouTube. But again, YouTube is not a friendly platform for anyone that's talking about anything that's potentially controversial, like, the well-being of men. Heaven forbid we should actually have those discussions, right? So kind of what we have here is systemic misandry where, it's okay, you can say whatever you want about men, but women are not to be criticized for fear of being labeled a misogynist. There was a hilarious video the other day. They were interviewing two girls on the street. They're 20 something, and they used the term misogyny for something, and the guy asks, like, okay, well, what is that? What do you mean misogyny? And the girls couldn't explain it. But they've been indoctrinated to the point where they just scream misogyny. They don't even know what it is, let alone misandry. They're not going to understand the perspective of men ever, and that's just the way it is. And with the continuous propaganda through the schools and the media and entertainment and all that, is not going to change. Some of the blowback is getting interesting. Like everybody saw Oliver Anthony's Richmond, north of Richmond, and who's Jason Aldean, the Try That in a Small Town. There's been a few things, and they've gone viral, and they're huge. Same for the that documentary that came out, The Sound of Freedom, right? The left came out against all of these, including The Sound of Freedom, where these are men that are saving children, protecting children, and the left is against it. They're calling it racism, because they call everything racism. And of course, it's pure bullshit, but this is how they operate, and that's how the narrative goes. Women are wonderful, men suck. That's kind of how it's been for a long time. So what are you going to do? Best thing you can do is, again, look out for yourself and see through the propaganda. But to give you an idea how entrenched that kind of anti-male, pro-female effort is going, it goes all the way up to the United Nations. They came out with their 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and one of them is all about gender equity. And of course, by gender equity, they're talking about Barbieism. They, we have to usher in a new era of tolerance and reason in order to foster a more inclusive and extraordinarily diverse and sustainable society, so that we can end the systemic inequalities, blah, 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 blah. It's kind of how the UN and WEF content works. Hey, look at that sunset. I'll tell you what, I never seen so many amazing sunsets as when I was in Arizona. I spent a lot of time in Lake Havasu because it's a cool town with a lot of cool stuff to do. But I went all over Arizona, out these huge cactus. They're like 40 feet high. And all these sunsets, I mean, there were just tons of them. It was amazing. So, I'm hoping I'll be able to get back out there and do some of that at some point. But right now, like I said, I'm just hunkered down, sort of regrouping, trying to figure out what to do next. I am working on another book, but I'm also thinking in terms of, I kind of want to weigh in on this stuff because the word needs to get out, and I just don't know the right approach for me. It's probably going to be writing. I'm an introvert, and I'm much better at writing than, say, I'm not one of those people that's real comfortable being on camera and being all energetic and bubbly and all that. And I'm just not really interested in doing that kind of content. So I'll probably write, and then podcasts maybe, but I'm not sure where I'm going to go with any of this. The important thing to me is that the word's getting out. I mean, it doesn't have to be me weighing in on these topics. But I do think having another perspective can help. And these channels, a lot of the channels, they don't resonate that much with me, but I know they resonate with other people. And so as long as the word's getting out, that's fine. I mean, you can have a channel. There's plenty of channels that are built just around female insanity. There's no shortage of content. You can go grab TikTok or YouTube videos of women just saying the most insane things, and then you can provide commentary on it. but I'm not interested in that kind of thing. And like I said, the problem has gotten bigger than Barbieism now. Now we've got this global leftist power grab. And, that's the side the Barbies are on. So the problem's gotten bigger, exponentially bigger, since the Summer of Love, where we saw the true colors of world leaders in Australia, Canada, the United States, all over Europe, all over the world. Really, I mean, the whole planet kind of shut down. And there's the whole controversy over that injection. Can you say that? I don't even know. You know what? I think I'm going to leave it right there. Because I'm just going to start going off if I start talking about that stuff, and I don't want to do that. Oh, look at this waterfall. I had to hike in about 8 miles to get to this waterfall, and it was amazing. It's in Utah. So I'm going to wrap it up, let you guys go. If you've stuck through to the end here, I appreciate that. I haven't done any content for a long time, but I announced it, and I did a farewell video and all that, and like I said, I just popped my head up to get that video up. So hopefully you guys get a kick out of that old white guy video. Maybe not. Maybe it sucks. I don't know. But I'm sort of trying to figure out where things are going and what people need to do next. So hopefully we'll get a little bit of discussion going on these things, and hopefully everybody's able to get informed through some means, whoever it is. I mean, I know my style's not going to resonate with a lot of people, but with some people maybe it does. So I'm just trying to decide the best way for me to proceed. So anyway, for those of you that replied, that were still subscribed and somehow magically got informed that I had posted that last video, I wanted to do this one just to give you guys an update, because I do appreciate your support for the short time that I had that channel active. I'm not going to do a lot more content over there. If I do anything, like I said, it's probably going to be on Rumble, and I think that might become a trend pretty soon. I would hope so. When you look at how they're treating Russell Brand, all it takes is an accusation, and you can have your livelihood taken away. So I don't see putting my eggs in the YouTube basket, because they're not a free speech platform. And the things I'm saying might trigger some people, might piss some people off. But if you've still got an adequate sense of reasonableness and intellect, you'll see that people talking about men's issues, they're generally not saying anything that isn't true. It's just people don't want to hear it. So anyway, I'm gonna sign off again. If you do want to check out what I did over on Rumble, it's Speaking Freely, and maybe you can find that over there, and I'll take a look. I haven't even looked at that channel for weeks because I was really disappointed at the lack of engagement. But I attribute that to just YouTube is so much more well established. All right, gentlemen. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you in the comment sections. I definitely will read that because I want to see what you guys have to say. Like I said, I was completely out of touch for like 4 years. Well, not completely, but I was pretty much off the grid. I was just hiking and mountain biking and windsurfing and swimming and paddling and, enjoying nature because that's my thing. So meanwhile, you guys take care of yourselves.